Evening, folks. Dr. Rowe. Hope you're well. I wanted to check in with you. What a great background, hey? This is a mood monitoring video I thought I'd share with you. And I think it's a great time to do it this time of the year, particularly as what a year we've had, eh? I mean, crikey, and the recent announcements that we've just had in the UK, certainly if you're watching this in the UK, lockdown, level 4 mutations and all the stuff that seems to be coming out in the news at the moment. And by the way, mutations are a pretty standard process for any virus, so although everybody's shocked, or a lot of people seem to be shocked, it's actually fairly standard with any form of viral expansion like this. It will find different mutations, and in fact, depending on how it reaches the body, may pick it up from one person, another person hits the body, it can even fight with their own immune system to create another variation. So some of the stats I've been reading is quite interesting. So I think what's happening is people's moods are being swung like left, right and centre, up and down. Financial concerns, job concerns, family, can't meet our family, can meet our family, what tier are you in? Don't know, do I need to travel through this tier to get to that tier? We've even had that conversation just in the last 24 hours with my mother, who's about 3 or 4 hours away from us. So what I've found over the years when I'm doing private one-to-one work or even group work with people, I'll often ask the question, and this is a really interesting one to ask yourself as well, and I'm going to share a personal share with you just in a moment, what is an emotion that you, or a mood, that you find you're experiencing more than anything right now? And we'll come back to that question just in a moment. If you've not ever done anything like this before, it's a really powerful exercise. And even if you have, I would suggest you do it again. So let me just pull this up so it's a little bit bigger for you. Hopefully you can see that. So there's 4 things I want to cover with you here in this live. The first one is, are you aware that your moods vary? So you could be somebody that's completely consistent and your moods virtually don't change at all, in which case you may want to have a check in with yourself just to find out if there's any emotional attachment, because actually somebody that's emotionally detached, they are incredibly left brain by nature, or they've learnt to numb themselves from what's going on around them, from their communications with intimate partners, business partners, family, the world around them. That's not such a healthy thing to do either, because what that does, it disassociates you from the world around you to such an extent where you may lose the quality of great connections with other people. If anybody relates to this, it'd be interesting to see if you give me a thumbs up on this and see if you understand what I'm talking about. Well, you may know somebody like that, and you can typically understand somebody's in that state because they are slightly distant, disassociated. You can't quite seem to get through. Somebody stuck their thumb up. I can't see who it is. Apologise. I'm not actually seeing straight as I'm doing this. So I think if you've come across that with somebody, knowing who I am as a person for years, when I met people like that, I would try and help them, reconnect, etc. But it wasn't really my role to do that. And I discovered this is one of the things you need to check in on yourself as well, is how many of you have found yourself over the last 6-8 months, particularly with the experience with COVID, almost trying to coach people, or give them your perspective on the world, or maybe give them a slightly different view on what's going on. Now, I know certainly that's something that I have naturally done for many, many years, and that can create a love-love or a love-hate relationship with people. Family, it's not a great conversation to have, is it? Because often there's a conflict there. But what this leads to is different changes in mood. So if you're somebody that has no changes in your mood at all, my question to you is, do you at least have some internal dialogue that goes on when a situation occurs, but you tend to dial that down, numb it down, create a volume level that's so low that you can't hear it and you don't express it? You might want to consider whether it's valuable to start to let some of those emotions out and allow yourself to have some degree of vulnerability, because for most people, they don't want to share a mood, a state, a change, because they're afraid to be exposed. They're afraid to be vulnerable. They see that as a weakness as opposed to a strength. And that's a whole conversation for a different day. If anyone's been with me on the Turning Point events for years, we've done this. Somebody's come up and they felt weak because they're vulnerable, and yet it's their greatest strength because of that honesty that comes out. So that leads to fluctuations in our moods, and that's great as well, because every one of us has areas of our lives that we are either super happy with or super unhappy with, or somewhere in between. It fluctuates, or we're feeling a little bit more exposed, we're feeling a little bit antsy, overwhelmed, and that can lead to these variations in your mood. So first of all, I want you to become aware over the coming weeks. I mean, we're going into Christmas, so it's slightly different, of course. I'm doing this at a point where some of you might be drinking a lot, having fun, although it's going to be a bit more challenging, but there's going to be a real interesting feeling around Christmas this year. So I wouldn't say use this next 2 weeks as your model for how your overall moods are. However, we do have patterns. So moods can be as a result of a reaction to somebody. Anyone relate to that, by the way? Or to something that happens, or an announcement. So be mindful of that. So number one is, first of all, start to notice your emotions, your moods, and notice what variations are happening. I just want you to increase your reticular activating system to raise your awareness. Number two is what emotions you feel more. So, and I've put that on the screen there. What are you feeling more of? Are you feeling anger? Are you feeling excitement? Are you feeling passion? Are you feeling more caring emotions? Are you feeling a sense of frustration or like hopelessness? I want you to start to monitor what type of moods, and it would be a really good exercise to do, is at this stage, see if you can at least get on paper what will you classify as your key primary modes. Every single human being will have certain moods that they go to, certain modes that they operate in, which can lead to a mood. Modes lead to moods. In other words, you can almost boil it down. Some people are just, this sort of person that's always grumpy. That's their default mood. They might have 3 variations on grumpy. So this is a great exercise for you to do. And whilst you're doing it, a good process is to observe other people who you're inspired by. So a good exercise I found over the years is to look around and go, right, who do I like? Who do I think's got a great vibe about them? Because every single one of us, myself included, can be inspired by another person, not necessarily by every facet of their character, but they may have a characteristic or a behavioural pattern that we go, I really like the way they do that. I really like their presence. I really like where they are. And you can model that. So start looking at your own mood variations. Start to be aware of others around you who seem to be a little bit more in balance or feel more like they're in their flow. And ask yourself the question, what are they doing differently to me? What moods are they choosing to have? Or what moods can I pinch that I like that they're using? And then start, as I say, look at what emotions you're feeling more of. So for me, as an example, one of the moods I noticed in the last couple of months was a sense of frustration coming up more to the surface. So that's one of the ones I want to talk about at the end, is what do I want to let go? And it was frustration with projects that I was starting or had started even right back in the summer and didn't feel like they were moving along as quickly as possible. And the frustration was in some cases towards a system that seemed to be slow, towards an organization that I might be working with, or even towards individuals, and of course towards myself as well. The reality is the biggest frustration is probably with me and the fact that what my expectations are here, maybe I'm setting them too high, or I haven't maybe communicated those to other people. So this is a really important thing. Now, I've only become aware of it because I do this sort of 6-point check in, and this is number 3 here. What is a 6-point mood check? Okay, so 6 times during the day, check in on your mood. Now you can do like a little chart if you want to do it that way. So on Monday, you check in and you establish what your core moods are. You can either write the mood down, or you can have a mood table. So if you're a spreadsheety geek, you can have happiness, joy, frustration, anger, annoyance. What are your core basic emotions that you're aware of that come up on a fairly consistent basis? And then down the left-hand side, list them out. And then you want to have 6-point checkpoints. Now, best way to do this is to start at the 2 ends of the day, right? So your 2 primary ones are start and end of day. So when you first wake up in the morning, and then just as you go into bed at night. This is absolutely vital. I mean, what the are you feeling like when you wake up, and what am I feeling like in the end of the day? And I'm doing this in a way that it could be a great mood, or it could be a sort of indifferent mood, and then it could be an absolutely shitty mood as well. Now, linked with this, we can start to look at diet, fluid intake, overall exercise, which also impacts your mental health as well, but we're not going to do that right now. I just want you to check in. All right, so what else do I need to do, Ro? Start at the beginning, and then the other one is in the middle of the day. So sometime around what you might classify as your lunchtime. It's depending if you're a lunch person or not. If you're doing intermittent fasting, all these things. I mean, for me, sometimes I won't eat from the night before right through to about 1 or 2 o'clock. So then I don't formally have a lunch, but that's okay. You then choose a midpoint in the day. So I would say roughly about 1 o'clock. And then somewhere in between those. So you've got, the way I look at it is there's 5 checkpoints, and then do you want to add a 6? Typically what I will do is I will go 1 in the morning. When I'm doing a mood, by the way, it's not like Dr. Rowe does this all the bloody time. When I wake up in the morning, and I'm always doing this, what I'm saying is have a period of this. Now, yes, you could do it over the next week or two. We're leading into Christmas. Is that a good idea? Probably not. Or a good exercise to do is maybe do it for the next 2 weeks, then press reset, and then do it for the first 2 weeks in January, which is a really fascinating period, by the way, because people go, right, this is it. I'm going to start the new year with all these new aspirations, and of course they kick off, and then moods go all over the place. Or the other way around, they start at the start of the year, and they're like indifferent. They're like, fuck, you know what? I'm going to start in the middle of January. That's when I'm going to get going. So it might be worth doing a whole month of this. But if not, pick a short period to do it, see how it comes up. All right, so as an example, morning, mid-morning, and lunchtime, right? There's the first 3, and then you've got the back end of the day, that's 4. If you want to do 5, you can. So in other words, you pick one halfway through the day. My experience has been it's quite good to do one halfway through the day and then do one typically around when you're getting back from work or COVID at the moment, lockdown, etc. It may not be the case. Maybe when you're just sort of going into that early evening period, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, no later than that. Because that's a really, I'd be interested to see if you agree with this, kind of a strange time for a lot of people. It's that twilight period, which is why I've included it in here. Why? Because part of you is like, this could be my creative time. Let me go write a book. Or this could be the time I'm going to go and come up with some ideas or sit at my computer. But it's also the time you go, fuck, you know what, I'm going to switch off and watch the TV. Tonight I'm going to just switch off. Now, if that consistently becomes a habit, not such a good idea, is it? Or maybe looking after the kids. And then back end of the day, boom, mood. So catalogue the moods. And if you can, maybe what I found useful, if you're doing it in a journal by hand, otherwise on your spreadsheet, if you're doing it as a spreadsheet, but a journal's quite easy because it's convenient, isn't it? What is going on in your mind? What do you think has triggered that mood? So now we need to assign something to it because patterns show up. Enough patterns will show up. Pissed off with the kids, pissed off with my wife, my husband, my job, my career, patterns in my workspace, technology. This is a really powerful exercise. I cannot stress this enough. And then number 4, what do you want to let go of? So having done this for about a week or 2 weeks, is there a repetitive mood that's coming up? Is there a mood that's not serving you? Is there a feeling or an emotion, is another word you might replace this, that's not serving you and you know you need to get rid of it? Or you feel it's not going to serve you, you hold on to it and then make a choice to let it go. So for me, I'm not saying I'm going to let it go completely because sometimes it serves us into certain situations. Like for me, frustration is also a driver for me as well. So it's not that I want to let frustration go. I just need to be more aware of it. I'm going to pass on it on a majority of the time. I'm going to test this into January and see how I get on. And a lot of it is because I have a very short timeline. I want to get things done now. If you came and did CWI with me, for example, communicating with impact, one of the things we look at is when people are communicating, they want to get their message over. Sometimes their timeline affects that, okay? So if your timeline is too compressed, you might be trying to get your message out too quickly. If your timeline is too long, it takes a long time to get your message out. So this whole thing about communication and moods is linked. So we need to understand our moods to be able to manage those moods in order to communicate our message in a more direct way. And if those of you haven't got yourself registered, remember we've got one on the 28th of Feb, 28th, 29th, 30th. It's our first ever online virtual CWI event. So go and get yourself booked if you haven't registered for that. But the timeline's important. So for me, what I'm going to do is just a personal share. These frustrations I have, I'm going to start to check in what they are. Because sometimes it's purely just the circumstances in the moment. COVID, for example, lockdown, they're on furlough, they can't respond as quickly as, and I'm expecting boom, 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 or my standards are up here, but actually not everybody can meet that because I've got unreal expectations. Not always, but in some situations. So I think it's important for us to be reflective of that. And I have to go, okay, that's a Dr. Rowe issue. That's not their issue. I don't know if this makes sense. Sometimes that helps because then we can take ownership of it. And now that releases that emotion as well because now we control it. We can look at it and say, right, fuck you. I don't want you. And it's actually my issue, not somebody else's at this moment in time. All right, I'm going to sign off. That's been a longer one than planned. Have a great evening and good luck with your mood monitoring.